All right. Welcome, everyone, to For the Love of Language. I'm EJ.
And I'm Stacy. Hi, guys. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute.
2025 has been such a bizarre year for everybody, I feel. It's been a year of a lot of change.
That it has.
Yeah. And so to all of our listeners out there, hope you're hanging in there.
Absolutely.
I was telling EJ about this really cute Instagram video that I saw. It was really cute, but it was also, like, understandable as a language person. So the video was this little girl. She was probably 4 or 5 years old, like in the back seat of a car, so you didn't really see her. But she was talking to her mom about how she missed her dad because her dad had like just left for a very short time. And she was speaking French, and she had structured the French saying to she reversed the word order, and her mom had to clarify in English that in English we say I miss you, but in French you say that someone is missing from you, essentially. And the poor little girl was like, but why? Pourquoi? Why? Like, was just very frustrated about differences in word order. And so I sent it to some of my friends who spoke French because they also get it, of just like, yeah, sometimes the word order difference is frustrating. And I was thinking about my students and how they get very frustrated with word order. So we were thinking about talking about word order today.
Yes, which is part of syntax.
It is. It is a syntaxy thing.
So syntax is really how sentences are put together and the order of those words and how they work together to get rid of ambiguity and know what is actually the actor and the experiencer and, you know, who plays what semantic role in a sentence.
Yes.
Can, depending on the language, be dependent on word order, or it can be dependent on grammatical cases. It can depend on different things. In English, we rely very, very heavily on word order. So if I say dogs chase cats, there's nothing about the word dogs or the word cats that indicates which one of them is the chaser and which one is the chasee.
Yes.
But it's literally just the word order that determines that. Versus if I were to say something similar in Russian, the word dogs would actually change. It would be nominative, which you might say, well, that's the default, so that's not really changing. But that is a grammatical case.
It is a grammatical case, and it is placed on it due to semantic reasons.
Right. And then cats would be in the accusative case, in
Yes.
this case, as the object of being chased. And so the words themselves would be different. And in Russian, you can actually then switch the word order because it's the case that determines that meaning. And you can say cats chase dogs, but have the word cats be the accusative case and know that you're actually talking about the dogs chasing the cats and not the other way around. Hopefully that made sense.
I know. We chose to talk about word order, and word order is, like, very confusing. And it's even more confusing when you have to talk about it linearly and you can't show people what you're talking about.
Right, we need diagrams.
If we could, we would show you a chart.
A syntax tree.
Yeah, there's a reason that syntax trees exist, and it is because word order does get confusing, and assigning case to things can get a little confusing. And, like, at the end of the day, there is kind of I say universal, but there is this idea that we are all trying to communicate the same things, but we're going about it in different ways.
Exactly. And so when you have that fundamental meaning of someone is the actor, someone is being acted upon, really what we're saying is some languages use word order to say that.
Yep.
And some languages don't. Or some languages do, but they just use a different word order than English does.
Yep, exactly. I know. One of my favorites is verb final languages. Gotta love a verb final language. I think for me, verb final languages are so much fun just because, like, as as someone, like, more often than not, you find the verb in the middle, like, between your subject and your object, and more often than not, the object and the subject might get, like, reversed around. But having verb final is really interesting because, you know, as someone who comes from verb in the middle language, English, seeing verbs at the end of sentences, you're like, well, okay, I know who it's happening to. I know the dog and I know the cat, but what's going on between them? Oh, I have to wait one more second for then, okay, they're being chased. Great, fantastic, good to know.
Yeah, that's really great. And in linguistics, often you'll hear that referred to as SVO languages, for subject, verb, object languages that are like English.
Yeah.
Or you'll have
most most Romance languages follow an SVO pattern, which is why, you know, Romance speakers can kind of jump into English and get most of it right because it follows a similar pattern, more or less. But then you throw an SVO speaker into an SOV language and they're like, oh no.
Yeah. And even in languages that are SVO, it can get way more nuanced really, really quickly. So if you think of like German, for example, if you have a sentence in German that has more than one verb, so for example, if I were to say, I know that you love cats, in English, like the I is the subject, know is the verb, and then this whole clause is an object to that sentence, but that clause also has, right, a subject, verb, and object, right? Yeah. But in German, when you have that second clause, the verb comes last in that clause.
Yep.
So it turns into, I know that you cats love.
Yes.
And so even though it's an SVO language, you still have these cases where the verb ends up at the end. And if you're like an interpreter, you get into these fun situations, kind of like Stacey's saying, where you need to wait until you hear that final verb at the end. And then you need to really quickly say what you're trying to say in English to catch up with what the person is saying. And it's a fun time.
It is a fun time. It's a fun time. Translating things is an art in and of itself. It takes a lot to navigate those spaces. But yeah, like even as a teacher, word order in even just like little ways can just be so frustrating to students. Like the thing that frustrates my students the most is having the adjective before the noun, because that's not something that's common in Spanish. Well, I say common, it's just not done, right?
It is done, actually.
It is?
That's another one of those rules that's not a rule. It's a pattern.
Oh, okay.
Most of the time, the adjective does come after the noun in Spanish. Yeah. But if you're talking about something that's like an intrinsic trait of a person, like a great person would still be like un gran hombre, like a great man.
Oh,
so you do have cases where the adjective
so what are my
comes before
students
the noun.
complaining for? I'm kidding.
Because it's still like not...
It's still fundamentally different.
It's not the primary pattern.
Yes, and especially when we're talking about, like, with some of my students, we're doing shapes and colors. They want to say the color first, they want to say the shape first and then the color. So instead of saying red circle, circle red. And it's like, we gotta switch it, we gotta flip it, it's a red circle.
Yeah, because that is the way that they're normally used to structuring it, and so it changes. And I think your example at the beginning also with French makes me think a lot of the word gustar in Spanish well, which we like to translate into liking something in English, but in reality the verb gustar is more of appealing. So to say like I like dogs in Spanish, what you're really saying is dogs appeal to me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's this difference. So it's not even a syntax difference in that case. It's just that the verb that you're using to get that meaning is actually a different verb that requires different parts of speech as the object and subject than what you would expect in English.
Right. Yeah. No, prepositions are another fun and frustrating one. Cross-linguistically, we had a whole section in my class about prepositions, and I had to tell them, look, prepositions don't translate. They don't. Every language uses prepositions a little bit differently. So, like, you kind of like you were saying with dogs appeal to me, right? We would, with appeal, we have to say something appeals to you, but you don't have to say that in Spanish, right? You and you can use other prepositions to like express different things, or what's another good example?
I can give an example.
Give an example.
With prepositions. Yeah. So a lot of the things that we do as prepositions in English are actually just affixes, like suffixes in Finnish. Mm-hmm. So for example, I am in Finland is 4 words in English, and we have the word in that.
Yes.
In Finnish, it's 3 words, minä, I, olen, am. But then in Finland, you take the word Finland, which is Suomi, and you change it to Suomessa. And that becomes in Finland.
There you go.
And so people are like, Finnish is so complicated. You have like so many cases, but they're just moving the meaning from the prepositions to the cases.
Exactly. Another one that my students get a little confused with is for and to. Doing something for someone or doing something to something, and that one's rough.
Yeah, it's hard, and so you end up having whole classes. Yep. Like for an English speaker going into Spanish, you'll have whole classes on the difference between por and para, which might both be translated into for in English depending on the context. Differently, but they are very, very different. Yeah. So, yeah,
prepositions are rough. I like it. The most frustrating thing as an English teacher is saying, I'm so sorry, you have to memorize this.
You just need like a certain quantity of input and practice in order for it to start feeling natural.
Exactly. But because like prepositions, they don't translate. They are part of, and I don't want to say functional grammar because that is like a theory within like syntax, but they are part of they don't carry a lot of meaning. They just relate things to other things that we have all just collectively decided as humans we're going to just use slightly different versions for different situations that, kind of make sense in context, but were honestly arbitrarily chosen.
Right, again,
to just get things to function.
Yeah, it comes down again in my mind to this concept that like there is meaning in the world, and all of these languages need a certain amount of complexity in order to express that meaning with some degree of specificity and accuracy. Yeah. And then that complexity just comes out in different ways in different languages.
It's true. And I mean, it's lovely and it's beautiful, and every language has complexity in its own way, and man, the complexity of syntax really, like, when it comes to speech, it's one of the complexity of like phonetics. That one, it does just take kind of like time and rote remote practice, but with syntax, I mean, that one also kind of takes rote remote practice, but it is like a mental shift. Like you do kind of have to rearrange the way that you're not just like putting things out of your face hole, but you have to like rearrange the way that you think.
Which I think is one of the coolest things about learning a language is like questioning all of those fundamental assumptions about how things should be expressed and thinking just a little bit differently.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you want to cover with syntax?
I don't think enough about syntax. I have so many friends who are syntacticians, and I've dabbled in syntax myself. And I don't, my brain doesn't work with syntax super great in terms of like theoretical linguistics. I can do it. People say that I'm good at it. Well, for me, I'm like, it's not as interesting as speech, but...
And everyone has their aspects of linguistics that are most interesting to them. So if you're like, this is totally boring to me and I don't care about this, what I care about is pragmatics or semantics, then that's great. Focus on that. Cool.
Exactly. But yeah, that's all to say that syntax is very fascinating, and I have some of the studies that I've seen my friends do regarding like specifically word order stuff. Oh, and don't get me started on computational syntax. I've got friends who do computational syntax and trying to like have all of these possibilities, all these like syntactic possibilities, and trying to figure out how they like fall into a certain level of complexity and trying to map that. It's fun. It's funny. It's funny.
That's the type of linguistics assignment that sometimes gives you nightmares.
Oh, truly, truly, truly. I know. And I mean, to just make this maybe a little more relevant for our listeners, there's a reason that AI is limited in what it can do, and it's because of syntax.
It's because language is complex.
It's because language is like super complicated, and it's a lot easier to copy and paste something you've seen before as opposed to generating a new structure, because God knows you can make it in so many different ways.
Right? And that kind of non-determinism, like the breadth of what's possible, is part of what makes it so much fun.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Well, let's call it for that on word order then, but let us know if you have any thoughts or questions of things you would like us to discuss, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!